Good morning and welcome to Succeed from the Start. We're today here going to talk about leading from the heart, not the head. And I've got the lovely Jacqueline Kent with me again, who I'm very excited about. I'm looking forward to exploring the difference between the heart and the head and why it's so important to start listening to our heart. So first of all, welcome, Jacqueline. It's nice to have you again.
Morning, Angela. Thank you so much for bringing me back.
Well, it's just something that's been on my heart for a long time, that for so many years we've been told that you can't sort of mix the heart and the head. You've got to be objective. You've got to look at the facts and not the emotions and not the feelings. But more and more, I look out in the world and you realize that by doing that, we've made a right mess, actually. And there's loads of things that's wrong with the world. How do you feel about that?
I agree. I think that we've been in a time where people think that practical, logical decisions are the way to do life. And when you do that, you're actually stepping away from what you know to be true. And sometimes you don't know why you know that. You just know that you do. We've been, I think, encouraged away from that way of feeling into things. And it does mean that I think that there's an essence of there's something missing in those decisions. Definitely.
Yes. I think it feels to me that sometimes decisions have been made without compassion, without empathy, without all of those things that as humans we hold dear or we should do if we're going to live in a life that care is important. And I think you're right. Growing up as children, all the old sayings about boys are told not to cry and all these kind of things, and women have been allowed a little bit more leeway to show emotion. But we all know about the glass ceilings in industry where a woman isn't considered to have the sort of strength to be able to lead big companies. And that's still true today, isn't it?
Yeah, and also I think that the some of this actually comes a little bit back to what we were talking about in the previous episode, the brief introduction one, which is all about where success, how you perceive success. You know, are you perceiving success on a material level, or are you perceiving success on an experiential, lived level, which is a completely different thing. So it's like that thing of getting to a certain point in your life, looking back and going, oh, well, I've got loads of stuff around me, but I don't really feel like I've lived. I don't really feel like I've experienced anything, but yay, I'm surrounded by stuff. Or are you going to look back and go, I actually really experienced my life. I was present in my life. And by doing that, I think that gives you a completely different angle on the way that you can lead, move forward, do things by being real, by being human, by having that human angle as well as practical knowledge and skills.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think when you look back on your life, are you going to be satisfied? Are you actually going, you can't take things with you for one thing. So if your life has been success driven, as in gathering of a huge bank balance and multiple cars and all of those things, it's not that they're wrong in themselves. And I don't think any of us would sit there and say no if somebody gives you a brand new car. You're not going to say, oh, no, thank you. Or, well, most people aren't going to say no, thank you. But ultimately, if that's where your feeling of success is, then it's, well, that's it. You can't take it with you. But
it's a level of satisfaction, isn't it? And fulfillment. Like, how fulfilled do you feel by having a brand new car versus how would you feel fulfilled by knowing that in leading and guiding people to their truth or on their path, you're actually giving them a gift that doesn't have any monetary value. It's something that you can't buy.
Yes, and it doesn't have a sell-by date either, does it?
No,
It doesn't.
no.
It's, I think when I joined the police, one of the interview that I went through, they were asking me about success, about how sort of what my motivation was, what I would be looking for in the terms of climbing the ladder, if you like. And I hadn't really thought of that question beforehand, but I just said, well, I am ambitious, but only as far as fulfillment goes. So I'm not going to climb over somebody and squash them just because I want to get to the top. But I am going to keep going and reaching for the top as far as fulfillment goes. And that's my guiding factor. I don't want the top job just for the sake of having the top job, which was interesting. There were men that were interviewing me, but they liked that answer. It was what they wanted to hear. And at that point, women in leadership in the police was even less likely to happen than in another company. So it was an interesting one. But I think it's so true. when we look back on our lives, what are we going to judge by? What are we going to feel as if we've lived a good life and a life that was worth living?
Yeah, and whenever I talk about something like this, I often think back to, I wouldn't call it my previous life, but a previous chapter of the life that I'm in now. And I was in a relationship that was incredibly unfulfilling. It was quite damaging to me, actually, or it could have been. It had the potential to be. I went through some quite horrendous experiences in that relationship, which lasted 14 years. And I remember that my get out plan, my escape clause, was that I would wait for my then husband to pass away and then I'd be free. And he had this story that men in his family didn't live past 55. And we're going back about 8 or 9 years and he's still with us. I haven't been with him for, 8 years now. And I think what I've done in that time versus what I would have been doing, which would have barely been existing, quite honestly, in the way that it was. When you look at it that way, it's like, where are you going to claim back what is rightfully yours? And for me, that was claiming back myself, claiming back my voice, my freedom. And yeah, I still think about that now because who knows how long anyone's going to be here. And there I was going, oh, I can start again in 15 years time or whatever it was. And now just thinking back now, for the last sort of 7 years, my life has completely shifted into many new levels, none of which would have been possible even. So yeah, it is that thing of how do you want to look back and what do you want to be able to say when you look back and how do you want to feel about what you leave behind you?
Yes. And to do that, you actually do need to listen to yourself because often you'll often hear people quoting about the fight or flight, the instinctive responses, and the acceptance that that's a normal human instinct that you need to protect yourself. And sometimes that's good and sometimes it's not good. But we kind of accept that that's a normal human response to life. What we don't seem to acknowledge or accept, particularly in the leadership role, is that the normal human instinct is to follow how we feel about something. It's to follow our heart. It's to follow that instinctive reaction. And that's not to say we can always judge people immediately. It's not about saying within a split second that this person is a good person or not, but it is about how settled do you feel about the decision that you're making? How settled do you feel about the life that you're living? So why do you feel it's important to do that and to start acknowledging that we should trust our intuition a bit more?
I've got two really good answers to this, so I'll try and make sure I do both. So the first one is actually that in stepping into that myself, I completely turned my whole life around in not just exploring what was possible through other people's eyes, through their logical take on what they saw my life was versus what I was actually experiencing, that I stepped in and was like, I need to be able to feel what actually does feel good. And I turned the focus to me to make sure that what I did were choices that I wanted, that I needed, that it encouraged me to do that, and changed not only my life, it changed my immediate surroundings, my family life, my home life. Everything shifted. And there was one moment where I really clearly remember having a conversation with my now ex-husband. And historically, this conversation had gone, do you think we should break up? And I'd go, no, we'll be okay. Logical head on. Let's keep going, marching on, marching forwards, because that was the right thing to do. And actually, in this moment, sort of a little bit further down the line, when I'd started paying attention to what actually would feel good in this, what would feel good for me, I just had this sense of knowing that it was going to be okay if I didn't say anything and I just agreed and said, yes, it's time. We're done here. We're done. And I remember that moment thinking, I'm not going back now. This is it. And so many other small choices that led to much bigger ones happened as a result. So much change happened, so much improvement. And then the other part of the second part of the answer is actually that in my work, so as we sort of briefly spoke about it, I am a human design expert. I teach about human design. I help people use and lean into their human design. The truth is that there are different types of inner knowing and different ways to know when that decision is right for you. And in understanding what yours looks like, you're able to really learn to trust that. So some people know instinctively, oh, I've got to go for this. I'm going to go forward. I'm going to do this. I'm going to press the button to sign up for this course or do this thing. They know. Some people might know in that moment, but then over time, that response to the opportunity or whatever it is might feel differently. And in helping them understand that they need to take a little bit more time and feel their way through it, it's called an emotional wave. So it goes up and it goes down, and seeing how you're responding over time helps you get to know, it's okay for me to feel good about this, and just explore if that continues to feel good before I say yes to whatever it is, or go forwards, or maybe in some cases say no. And that's one of the things that I love about the way that that system works, is it's really helping people tune into their unique decision-making process and just helping them understand it so that they can then make informed but also intuitive decisions, and really just empowering them to make decisions and know that if they feel good and they continue to feel good, then you're on track.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I think, I mean, we spoke before as well, having looked at some of these things to a certain degree myself, understanding that I am someone who just knows in the instant. And it's just something that's all pervading, if you like. It's just like, and my husband would say, well, how do you know that's the right thing to do? And it'd be like, I don't know. I just
I
know.
just
And
know that I know.
just know that I know. And knowing that that's okay, because to be honest, in the past, I was told, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't possibly do that. You've got to go away and you've got to look at the facts and you've got to look at the figures and all of these things." And that's so frustrating when, truthfully, you don't need to, because you do know. But like you say, knowing that not everybody's like that, sometimes they need time to process. But they're still actually listening to their intuition, but they need to listen to it in a different way, is what you're saying, isn't it?
That's exactly it. For some people, it arrives as a sense of knowing. For some people, it's a sense of literally feeling it in their gut. But for different people, for some people, it can be that they need to talk it through so that they hear what's going on outside of themselves before then going, okay, yeah, that is a good decision. It isn't just about like all about what's going on inside, but tuning into that and then adding other things in that help you go, okay, here's how I'm going to reach that final yes, no, whatever it might be. And it is that thing of instinct versus logic. So it's very much, if someone asks you to explain how you're impossible, because you just know that but for them, they're like, well, how can you trust that? But for them, they might work quite differently. And so that they might just not get that because they don't have that aspect in their human design, in their genetic blueprint, which is fundamentally what it is.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So one of the things that is very important, I think, particularly again for women, is that time and that effort to understand yourself and to hear and listen to your heart and where is it leading you has been pushed to one side, particularly I think, as I say, for women, where objectivity has been pushed upon you. And also from the point of view of self-confidence, there's a lot of women out there that literally don't have the self-confidence to believe in what they think and how they feel. So how can we encourage those women who are struggling with that self-confidence to start trusting, first of all, actually to start listening to what their heart is saying, and then to begin to take steps towards trusting it?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I think the first thing would be find a role model in someone where you have seen that the way that they do things differently has made a difference in their life. So you have some kind of evidence that you're not just doing something because perhaps it feels a bit like somebody said this will be a good idea for you. Because when you have somebody that you follow or that you are watching that is walking their talk, then that can really help inspire you to keep moving forwards. For me, self-care, and it can be a little bit of a buzzword thing, but it has been an absolute game changer and it's finding what for me feels like self-care. So one of my things was really tuning into expressing myself to myself. So journaling and really writing and exploring what was going on for me, thinking about it, seeing it in front of me, and often that would be enough to clear the cobwebs for me to go, okay, now I know that it's okay for me to spend this time, because time is a real factor in a lot of the conversations that I have. People say, well, I haven't got time for that. I haven't got time to make time for me. And I think especially as women, a lot of that comes down to the fact that our time has always been stretched very thinly between responsibilities, jobs, families, parents, children, all of that stuff. And I'm trying to think where I was going with that. I lost my thread just for a moment. That when you put more time in, you get more time back. So in understanding that by giving yourself, let's say, 10 minutes a day, that I genuinely believe is possible for anybody. 10 minutes. Whether you set your alarm and you wake up 10 minutes earlier, or before you have your cup of tea, you factor something else in that is just something that you're doing where you're considering your own needs. Because if you don't consider your own needs, nobody else is going to. And that's actually what happens as a result. So it isn't just that you start looking for what you need and it always ends up being about you focusing on you. The more value you have for yourself, the more other people will value you and appreciate you. And then that expands the energy of support, of just a much more feel-good vibration. But it is about recognizing that that's what needs to happen. For me, it happened when I hired a coach, and that was August 2016. And we had a conversation, and she said to me, if you learn to put yourself higher up the list, everything else will fall into place. And even as she was saying it, I'm sitting there thinking, she has no idea. She does not know what it's like to live in my life, to be in my shoes, to live in this house where nobody can be left alone with anybody and everybody's at loggerheads. But I'd paid her for this time and to put this effort in to trying to find a different way to do things, because nothing else I'd done had actually helped or worked. And I knew that it was time for it not to be about me doing it by myself. That's another thing as well, is just reaching out and finding someone that can help, that you can lean on, that you can take your thoughts, feelings, and a word that came up this morning actually on social media that somebody said, I think that needs to go in a dictionary, was the word stuckness. We often stay stuck in our stuckness and we don't think that there's a way we can reach out of it to find something that's going to bring us up and help us find a way forwards. So finding somebody that can just give you a few suggestions even, so you can then pick the one that feels good. So it isn't, here is a plan. It is literally, you might want to go for a walk. You might want to drink more water. Sometimes it's the simplest things, because that helps your energy to keep moving as much as anything else. I could talk about this all day, as you can probably tell, but it is literally, self-care changed my life. And from that, I then began talking about it more and helping other people with it more. And that eventually led me to where I am now. And fundamentally, knowing yourself is an amazing form of self-care, which is where human design comes in.
Yes, indeed. And just knowing yourself, knowing that, for me, one of the changeovers was such a simple thing, that the heart is fully functioning before the head is. The heart is the part of our body that encapsulates who we are and everything about us. And so listening to the way that it's, not just the way it beats, but the way it makes you feel. And it's a funny one, I know, because we use the symbol of the heart so often, Valentine's cards and all of these things, and it can be quite kind of almost a childish view of what the heart is. But the heart is what makes us live. It's that beat, that part of us that it's so unique. And our thought processes, on the other hand, I believe, are very much affected by what we see, what we hear, the way people treat us as growing up as children. Were you given time to be yourself as a child, or were you constantly pushed in a particular direction by a parent who was very demanding, or a parent who needed affirmation all the time and actually used the children to give them the affirmation that they needed as a human being? And I think it's very important that whatever childhood you had, whatever experiences you had, that you do exactly what you're talking about, and you go and you sit and you discover who you really are, yourself, not who other people say you are, not who other people have pushed you into or shaped you into. Who are you? Where are you comfortable? What's important to you? How do you think and feel about the world? And something else that we haven't got too much longer, but I would just love to touch on the leadership role of within the country now. If you're watching this on replay, it could be the elections all decided and all of that's gone. But just at this minute in time, we're at a point where all the sort of would-be leaders, those who we're supposed to trust, are out there fighting for their position in Parliament. And I hear so much of the head speaking. I hear so much of the sort of logical, or the trying to prove that I'm worth it kind of speak going. What difference do you think it would make if we had leaders who were leading from a point of compassion, from the heart, listening to who they are and what the world needs?
I genuinely just believe it would change the world, because the thing about leading from logic is that it's not always authentic. It's often prescribed in some way. It's, like you said, trying to prove or trying to please people. Whereas when you step into, I am putting this in front of you because I believe it's the one thing that is going to support your family, your whatever it is that they are looking at. At the moment, it just feels like they're all just trying to, I can do better than you, and I can do better than you, and it's ego driven, and it's not healthy. And when it comes to deciding who's going to run the country, do you want to pick somebody who is literally just there trying to be better than everyone else? They say for example, when we're elected, we're going to do all these things. Well, if they're the right things to do, why have you not already looked at doing them instead of waiting and genuinely knowing that they're for the greater good? So what is stopping you from doing it in this moment? Instead of waiting for somebody to tick a little box, it doesn't make any sense. So I genuinely believe that we are moving into a time where that is going to have to change, and it will change, whether it's whatever that looks like, because we need authenticity. We need people who are real. It's not about what it looks like on paper.
No. No, I mean, how many times have you sat and listened to a politician on the radio who just doesn't answer the question?
Mm-mm.
Never mind tell you what he really believes. He simply just doesn't answer the question. And I wonder how much of that is because they aren't allowing themselves to be connected to what their heart is saying. They're afraid if they say what their heart is saying, some other person is going to come back to that interview, pull it to pieces, and say, well, you can't say that. You're supposed to be in leadership. They're not really allowed to say it like it truly is, say it like they really, really feel. How refreshing would it be if literally what came out was that their gut feeling, intuitive, natural, heart
Mm.
leadership of what they believe is right?
It would be so much more inspiring to follow as well, to follow people who are actually real about what they are passionate about, not what they are waiting to find out if other people want, and then just reorganizing everything to fit. It's not congruent. It doesn't align, is the best way I can put that, because yeah, it's not. And people would feel that as well. People would feel the energy of that, and people can feel the energy of what it is right now. And I think that that's where there's a lot of pushback and it just doesn't sit right.
I think that's absolutely true. So just coming back to something that you said before, you said about in 2016, I think it was, that you hired a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to touch a little bit on that for people who are listening, because I've seen such changes in my own life and also in the life of my clients when they are given the opportunity to explore themselves, what's important to them, how can they express it, and ultimately, usually, how they can then help other people. Because we talk about leading from the heart, but leading from the heart has to start with ourselves. So we have to understand ourselves and explore and discover those things that we can change, because we have the power to change everything as long as we put our minds to it. So if somebody is feeling like they're really confused about their own decision making process, they're confused about who they are, how they work, what's kind of right for them, and maybe because other people have pushed things on them and they're sort of trying to find their own feet, what would be, how did they find you, and what kind of work could you do with them?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, my website has plenty of resources. I've written several different themed blog posts about some of these aspects. I have a free guide which actually takes you through the different types in human design to help you start to make a little bit of sense of that for yourself, because that's the starting point when it comes to truly seeing yourself. To then, I always offer a free 30-minute, I'm now calling it a curiosity call. It was a clarity call, but I'm calling it a curiosity call, where we can just have a conversation that is, what would it look like? What intuitively do you feel is the right thing for me? And I would never say to somebody, this is what you need to do. But when you have a conversation with somebody and they have guidance that feels aligned with that conversation, and then that's offered out, you're able to sit with that and think, well, okay, that has got my imagination running now. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes you just need somebody to unlock that little bit of what it would look like to have someone hold that space. So my weekly emails have, again, they've just gone on a slight up level. They used to be called the gentle bum kick. They're now called the loving shove. So if you picture a baby bird on its branch and it's thinking about going out into the world and it's reluctant, the mum's there going, come on, you can do this. And that will be me. I will be there giving you that loving shove. So if you wanted, you can just sign up for those emails as a starting point. And I get a lot of great feedback on those emails because I'm honest and I'm real in them. And I think that is, as we've explored, very important.
Yes, it definitely is. It's important as well to, like you say, to give that space to people. And I think it's one of the important things with coaching, and with, at the risk of being a little bit controversial, the difference between coaching and counselling, where not that counselling isn't important, and for many people it's a place where they can explore their past and they can come to a point of accepting that it's okay, that other people have been there and that it's okay that they have been in that place. But the difference for me with coaching is then, okay, so what are we going to do about it? Are we going to always live just in acceptance that it's okay? Or are we going to say, but now I'm going to release myself from it. I'm going to make decisions in my life that will mean I'm using that past as a springboard to what's available to me in the future, and using those experiences to lead other people because of that compassion that you might feel for other people who've been in your shoes. So just one last question, really. Have you got just an inspirational message, something that maybe there's a client of yours, or maybe there's something for yourself that when you discovered, or when they discovered in their life something new that they could lead to, what difference is actually made in their life?
The one that I always come back to, which for me sums up a lot of the way that I have moved through things, and I always like to remind other people that it's possible. It's just a few words, and it's just, you always have a choice. And really helping people see that wherever they're at, there is always a new choice that can be made. When you continually choose the same things, you continuously experience the same outcomes. So exploring the other choices that might be available for you, you're then able to change the direction in which you're headed.
Lovely. I love it. So if you are watching us today and you're in a point in your life where you just feel like you're treading water, or for me, at one point, I felt like I was walking through treacle, never mind water. I just wasn't getting anywhere, and it was so frustrating. If you're feeling like that, or also if you're doubting yourself, if you find yourself in a position where you're not sure which way to go, and you don't even have the confidence to try, and that may be because of things in your life, from other people, it may just be because of your own self or lack of self-worth. The thing is, don't stay there, because one of the choices that you could make today would be to reach out and ask for help. Or as Jackie says, maybe just signing up for the newsletter, something, a way of just giving yourself that chance to move forward and to discover how you can listen to your heart and how you can lead yourself by your heart once you trust it enough to allow it to be in control. And that's something that I'm passionate about. And if you've got a story to tell me about the difference that you made when you started trusting your heart, I would love to hear it. So reach out and start just to ask me and we'll talk. But thank you very much, Jackie, for coming along. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And I look forward to hearing more at a later date.
Thank you for having me on again.